My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, I'm so excited for this video. I think it's pretty straightforward from the title. I'm going to decide off the cuff what I would build as a 9-pan palette if I did a collab with a brand and pretty much the sky was the limit, except for that it was 9 shadows, 9 pans. I haven't made any plans about this. I haven't really thought about it. I'm just going to do it before your very eyes. And it's also kind of going to be the 9-pan palette that I would end up with if I were doing it under duress, just within an hour. Like, I'm gonna do it right now. I think probably if I were actually designing a 9-pan palette with a brand, it would take me much, much longer and I would go through many phases. This is just gonna be kind of like what I happen to come up with at the first burst. I think it will be really fun. I have a bunch of eyeshadow palettes here and single eyeshadows. This isn't my entire collection of eyeshadows. It's just all of the palettes that I grabbed when I started thinking about what I might want to use to swatch around and get ideas and build my little cobbled together approximation of the 9-pan palette that I would create if I were doing a collab with a brand. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. As usual with this kind of project, the first thing I'm going to do is to just play. I'm going to start swatching around, opening things, pulling things out of palettes, moving things and putting them next to each other. I'm just going to fast forward through that, put some music over it, and when I've gotten to a good stopping place where I feel like I have something to report back to you, I will report back. All right, I think I have everything I need to work with. Although of course I might go back into my palettes and look for other colors if I get down to it and I feel like this isn't diverse enough or if I'm not happy with the final color story, but this is a good starting place for me. Now, some of these shadows represent the same thing. There are a number of shadows that I picked that just go along with other shadows, and I would be trying to approximate a combination of them or what they do for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is to group them into their groups because some of them are basically redundant. Okay, I've separated them somewhat successfully into their groups. It might not totally shake down that way, but I hope you guys see what I'm doing here. If each one of these groups were to stand alone, if I were to make a palette that consisted of one from each one of these idea groups, some of these are groups of 1, like these mattes are each a group of 1, these are each a group of 1, some of them are groups of 2, some are groups of 3 or 4, but let's see how many groups I have. So I have 15 groups here. You could roughly say that I have 15 color ideas, 15 ideas for a single color that would appear in my 9-pan palette. That means that 6 of them are going to have to go. So let's go group by group. I'll talk about the color that I envision each group to stand for, and we'll see if any of them seem redundant and if I want to kind of push the palette in one direction or another in terms of color story. So the first thing, and one that's absolute, is the blackest black. My palette would have to have the blackest black. And this is the blackest black in my collection. It's the black from the Kaleidos Sci-Fi Green palette. That is amazing. Do you see that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between? Do you understand how precious that is to a grungy makeup lover like me? That's one for sure. I'm not going to let the idea of having that incredible rich matte black go. So now we're down to 8 spots in my palette. I cleared the decks a little bit because I feel like I need some space to talk about sort of bronzy, rosy, rose gold colors. This is one of the first ones that I reached for. It's from the Daydream palette. You guys saw me pop it out. I also reached for ACD2 from Adept Cosmetics. Similar idea, a little bit less bronzy light. And this is Nomad from Juvia's Place. So these are all different, but you can see what I'm driving at, right? You can see the general idea. It's kind of this like really rich rose goldy red. This is the kind of color that I end up opening palettes in order to grab. This is the kind of color that I always include when I'm building a palette for myself out of my magnetic singles. And I love using a color like this for an all over the lid single shadow look. To me, it has this neutral quality that makes it wearable, but it also has kind of an editorial quality. So these are the shadows that I picked out to represent kind of like a more duochrome-y, crystalline purple shifting version of the same kind of color idea, although these are, I think, a little bit less similar to each other, perhaps, especially this last one, which is Cleona Blaze. So this first swatch here of this group is Fairy Tale from the Daydream palette by Alter Ego. The second one is Mr. Sandman, which is a ColourPop single. This third one is from the Natasha Denona Leela palette, and then this last one on the bottom here is Blaze, which is a Cleona shadow. So I feel like one sort of really ruddy, shifty, goldy red color would want to be in my palette. And then I feel like one of these glimmery, dimensional mauves would want to be in my palette. And I think I'm going to go for... I think that to represent this color group, I'm actually going to lean into the one that's the most red, which is Nomad, although I might change my mind later. And I think to represent this bottom group, I'm going to lean into the one that I feel like has the most depth and really the most purple in it, which is Mr. Sandman. Even though it's so dimensional, I feel like it's the one that's giving me the most. I might change my mind later if I feel like I need a highlighting shade. I'm reluctant to give up Fairy Tale because I really, really love that shadow from the Daydream palette. But for now, I'm going to select these two as my first two. I was just about to wipe these swatches off, but I think I want to go ahead and swatch this Natasha Denona shadow from the Leela palette underneath here and see how different it is from these, because it's also purple. Oh, it's so grungy and good. And then I feel like I need to swatch Grisaille under that because it's got something in common. Oh, it's like so different but so the same. I honestly feel like these two together are blowing this entire idea out of the water. So I'm taking back Mr. Sandman. Mr. Sandman is out. And I'm actually going to put both this super grungy purple and Grisaille into position. And then I feel like Unexpected from JD Glow, which is like my all-time favorite grungy multi-dimensional shadow. This palette is really leaning into these reds right now. I'm going to stick with Grisaille as being that one blow your socks off shade. I think I'm going to put the idea of sort of like a gray-green shifting multi-chromatic shade on the back burner for now, although I might bring it back later. And gosh, I feel like we need to take these red multi-chromes to task as well because they're so similar now to everything we've got so far. These are both from Cleona. This is Kiln and this is Forge. And then these are all of the shadows that I've presumably picked so far. And they do all go together, but it's almost like they're too similar. And I definitely feel like from this angle, I feel like this multichrome with the magenta shift is taking it a bit too far. And I love the grunginess of Forge, that sort of gray-green undertones. I'm gonna pop out Kiln. Kiln's not gonna make it in, but I would love to have a multichrome in a palette that I built. I'm gonna keep Forge in the bunch. I don't know if all of these will make it through to the end, but I'm gonna keep them in for now. All right, let's talk about brown. Some kind of brown, browny, grungy, bunchy, greasy, greeny, grippy, browny bronze. That is what we're dealing with here. So these are the two that I pulled from my collection that I feel like are the perfect, really deep, grungifying outer corner shadows that aren't quite matte. And that's something that I would definitely want in my palette. So I would want that really matte black. And then I would want something that's like a satiny, really rich, deep color. And I feel like this is the best approximation of it. That's Makeup Geek Steampunk. I feel like just for ease of use for a palette, for me, if I'm building it, a matte black and like a satiny, rich, purpley brown that has some slip to it, those are going to be the two most useful shades. They're kind of like the necessary ones for me. So both of those are for utilitarian reasons going to make it in for now. I really love this shadow from the Natasha Denona Lila palette. It's a similar idea. It's just a little bit less intense, a little bit less rich, and it has a little bit of like a grayish purple undertone to it. That's really beautiful. It could also serve, but I think that for the purposes of just how it's swatching, this one down here is the one I want. Although maybe like a blend of the two. Maybe if I were actually creating the shadows, I would want one that had the richness of steampunk, but the undertones of the one from Natasha Denona. I'm gonna layer them one on top of the other when I swatch them. All right, we need to talk about this color category, which is basically brown leaning bronze or like a shiny dark brown. I'm not totally sure if this would make it in because I feel like it's a more mundane color, something like this. I think this last one's actually on the green side. Yeah, so we're gonna kind of flow into the olive green idea. But this is the kind of color that I love in a palette. And I like these ones I've selected, especially the first two, because they're not orange, they're not warm, they're really brown. They're like a cross between brown and bronze. So this one's from Juvia's Place. This one is a Natasha Denona shadow from the Gold palette. That's the first two. The darker one is the Juvia's Place. And then this third one is Golden Olive by Colored Rain. And then this last one is Adept Cosmetics ACS 26. Those are both kind of leaning into the green. So this top group, which is like a really, really rich, not copper bronze, like a really brown bronze, I think I'm going to put it in the maybe list. I'm not, like it's something that I would love to have in a palette, but maybe if it were like a 12-pan palette, I'm not totally sure it's going to make the cut for a 9-pan palette. So I'm going to put it to the side. And then an olive color. I'm going to swatch this other green. Gosh, it's really hard to choose. These more chartreusey, muddy olives against this really deep khaki olive. I feel like it's a situation where I can't pick both. It's like they're too similar. And these middle toned ones, it's almost as if they incorporate the idea of the brown that I've ousted. And this dark one, gosh, I think I need to swatch this gunmetal-y color as well. So that's a really shiny gray black. And that's the kind of thing that I love to see in a palette. But I actually think it might make the palette less attractive to other people. I think that this is the kind of thing that not everyone loves to work with. It's a bit of a novelty. So even though I love that, I am not going to include that like black with sheen. And I'd like to include an olive, but it's a tough call between like a more golden olive and a more greeny olive. I think I'm gonna have to make that call when I see the rest of the colors in the palette. So I'm gonna put these shades, I'm gonna put these last two. Yeah, ACS 26 from Adept, and this is Sydney Grace Defiance. I'm gonna put them in the pot together, but I know that it's gonna be one or the other when we get down to it. Okay, let's talk about blue-brown pigment. This is a category that I really love, but all three of these are totally different. This is ACD 6 from the Adept Cosmetics collection. It's more of a topper, but I really, really love the way that it looks on the eyes. This is from the Natasha Denona Lila palette, and it's more of like a red shifting one. And this is a Natasha Denona single called Sienna, and it's more of a bronze one. So they're different, but they're all sort of the same idea. They're all amazing, they're all extraordinary, but I feel like putting a blue-brown pigment like this into a palette is passé at this point. I feel like everybody does it every single time, and I understand why, because I do really love shadows like this, and they can really make a look special, especially when everything else in your palette is mundane, but I don't feel like I need to do it. I'm going to have a lot of really, really special shadows in my palette, and I pretty much feel the same about these other two. This one here in the middle is just, it has too much in common with a bunch of the shades I've already picked. And then this one here at the bottom, it's a really special version of a bronze, like a brownie olivey bronze. So maybe it will go in place of one of the greeny olives that I picked, or in place of one of the brown bronzes. But for now, I'm going to shunt all of these to the side. These are the boarding groups that we have left. These are the groups. Let's talk about extraordinary golds. I feel like a gold shimmer is also passé in a palette. Like, nobody needs another gold shimmer. But all of these are really extraordinary golds. So this first one is JD Glow 365. This second one is Brass from the Natasha Denona Gold palette. This is Kava from the Gold palette. I have huge pan on this, and it's basically just a clear base with a bunch of champagne shimmery suspensions in it. And this is Weathered, which is a Cliona multichrome. It's really different. Weathered is like a green to yellow multichrome, but to me it sort of fits with this boarding group of extraordinary golds. This is tough. I've just been sitting here looking at these swatches for like a minute and a half and not talking. I'm sure I cut that out, but that's what I've been doing. I feel like I thought that I wasn't gonna spring for this multichrome. I already have a multichrome in my group, but when I see it here, I see that it's chartreuse. It is a gleaming, glowing, shifting, incredible chartreuse shadow, and chartreuse is my jam. I'm such a sucker for anything chartreuse. I'm going to slide it into my palette's DMs for now. We'll see how it fares in the final reckoning. I'm gonna not give in to the temptation to include a really amazing gold shadow. Even though these are more amazing than other gold shadows that exist, I feel like everyone has a really amazing gold shadow at this point. And if the palette feels like it's lacking at the end, then maybe I'll pull one of these in and switch it out for something else. But for now, I want to see what the palette looks like if I don't include a banging gold. Okay, we have 3 boarding groups left, and we have 8 groups selected to board. Oh, sorry, some of these are out of frame. We have 8 groups selected to board. So if we're keeping all of the groups that have been selected to board the palette, then we can only pick one of these, or we could pick one of the ones that has gone to the wayside. So let's talk about blue. I feel like including blue in a palette is a choice. I feel like a grungy blue can take you far, and both of these are grungy blues. I think that my dream would be like a combination of these. Both of them have really dirty undertones, like really, really dirty bases, but the Adept one has more, it has more shimmer in it. And this one, which is from Luxie, this is Omega by Luxie, it's a little more teal and it just has a little more black in it, but that down there, that is what I would want. And then these are both mattes. Sorry, the camera stopped recording when I was swatching them, but this one is from ColourPop and this one is Natasha Denona from the Gold palette. I don't use mattes very often, but when I do use them, these are the kinds of colors that I like. I like to put mustards like this in my crease, and I like to use burgundies like this to deepen up my outer corner. I feel like this burgundy has been replaced in my estimation when considering this palette by the idea of this like really, really deep, rich, sheeny, satiny, almost matte, blacky brown type of purple. So I'm not going to include that dark burgundy. Let's see how we are looking if instead of including the mustard, I include the blue. Let's see how the palette looks when it's all swatched out, 9 swatches down my arm. But let's do blue last. I'm going to swatch them top to bottom. Let's do blue last because then we can see what the palette looks like without it. And let's like diversify the order a little bit. Let's do like, yeah, let's see how we're looking with that palette. Okay, we haven't added the blue yet, but I already feel like I want to make some changes because I'm feeling like the palette is a bit redundant on my arm. Even though the finishes are different, I feel like Grisaille from Cliona right here, Nomad from Juvia's Place right here, and Forge from Cliona right here. Although Forge looks really different from my angle. I don't know if I'll be able to like reveal that to you, but it looks really, really different from where I'm sitting. It looks kind of like bronzy rather than being so red. But still, I feel like there's too much redundancy there. They almost look like the same. They're different, but they almost look like there's too much the same. I also feel like there are a lot of dark shades, and I really love dark shadows, but I think this dark black with this dark brown with this really deep olive, which I ended up mixing the two together, and even with this dark purple, I almost feel like there are too many outer corner deepening shades and not enough glamour. So I'm gonna do some switching out, some switchy outy business. But first, let's put the blue on my arm and just see how it all looked together, see how it would have looked, and maybe that'll help me decide if I'm gonna keep the blue in at all. I don't know, you guys. It's pretty, but it's just not looking very me there on my arm. It's just looking a little bit bland. I mean, it's not bland at all. These are amazing shadows, but it's not singing. It's not singing. I'm gonna do some work. All right, we've opened up 4 seats on the plane. I'm gonna see if there are any of those color categories that I originally rejected that might have a place here. And I'm gonna start with Extraordinary Gold. Okay, so I decided on Natasha Denona Cava for that Extraordinary Gold. It's the warmest and the most champagne of all the golds that I was looking at. It's also semi-sheer. That's a type of product that I use a lot. It's a semi-sheer glittery eyeshadow in a clear base. I use that a lot underneath my eyebrows. So it's very true to me that it would be in here. This has so much green, so much chartreuse yellow green in it, and the other 3 golds I was looking at all had a lot of green in them. So I feel like this one provides the most diversity in pretty much every way. So this is Fairy Tale from the Daydream palette. It's really pretty, but with both Cava and Grisaille here, I feel like it's too redundant. All right, now we're talking. I feel like bringing in a shadow like this, which is both grungy and bright, is really helping because it's got that groundedness in these greeny shades down here and its undertones. It's also got a little bit of a red shift in it, so it's really tying everything together, but it's bright. So it can work on the lid as something that brightens up a look, that draws in light, draws attention, and it's helping to balance out my tendency towards really, really dark eyeshadows, which is coming clear here. I think maybe we can stand to have another matte, especially given that I've kicked out that satiny brown. Let's try a matte mustard. Ah, yeah, this is starting to look real good. This is starting to look real good, and I feel like it has more personality now. Do you think that this could handle the blue? Maybe it could handle a purple now? No. So one thing I'm struggling with here is that from where I'm sitting, this shadow forge, both the surface of the pan and the swatch, looks really bronze. It looks like multichromatic bronze with flashes of red. In the monitor, from straight above, with all of these lights, it looks pinkish red. And there's nothing that I can do in terms of angling my arm to make you see what I see, and even angling the pan. So I'm gonna take a picture of it from where I'm sitting, and I'll insert the picture right now. And that way you guys can see kind of what I'm dealing with, and it'll maybe help you understand my thought process a little bit better. So I like the way that it looks from above, but I love the way that it looks from where I'm sitting. It makes it a little bit more neutral, but it also, to me, makes it more unique and more grungy. But both things are good. I love a color that shifts like that. And I feel like the fact that it looks the way that it does from above is why I was able to let go of Nomad, because I feel like it was just duping it. But it's providing me both with a dupe for Nomad and with a really, really textured and different kind of bronze that's keeping me from feeling compelled to pull in one of these flat brown bronzes. So Forge is doing double duty for me there. I just wanted to make sure that you guys could see that that was happening. And curiously, I feel like any of these three would really, really change the color story, would really change it, but I'm not sure which one would be the best choice. And I could even pull something in that's really radical, like this green that's sitting off screen right here. I don't know if that's really the palette that I would make, but there's something about this grungy color story with a lot of glimmer and texture in it that supports almost anything you might add to it. That's pretty, that's the blue-brown pigment, but it's just been done too many times. It's just too boring. That purple is really pretty. It makes it a little midnight sun-y, like textured midnight sun. I don't know, the blue's pretty, but again, it's like, even though it's not a blue-brown pigment, that pop of blue just feels passé to me right now. I think I know what I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna be really practical with this final shadow. So this right here is another shadow from the Daydream palette. It's the one called Cloud 9. And it's a really rich, creamy rose gold bronze. This is the kind of shadow I was saying when I did my initial glance over everything I'd pulled out. This is the kind of shadow that makes me open a palette. I know it's in there, and when I'm in a rush and I want to put something all over my lids, I open the palette and I reach for that creamy rose gold bronze. All of these look amazing together, and I love the color story, but none of them is like that practical, go-to, perfect, light, grungy shade for putting all over the lid. And that's what this is. And I definitely want something like that in my palette. I feel like I could have gone for a bronze, like a straight bronze. I could have gone for something like this, and it would have served the same purpose, but it would have given a little bit less color diversity to the palette overall. It would have made it a little bit less exciting overall. So I'm going to stick with this really creamy, kind of straight up rose gold. I would tinker with it. I would pick the perfect tone. I would make sure that it wasn't something that's been too widely replicated. I would want it to feel unique. I might try to convince whatever brand I was working with to do that mixed font thing where you crush and cream a bunch of different kind of speckles of shimmer into it just to give it a little bit more texture, excitement. But at the end of the day, this would be a practical inclusion. And that's it. That's my first crack at a 9-pan palette. I'm gonna give you a close-up of these swatches. And again, I'm not sure that this overhead shot with the overhead lights is doing very many favors for these multi-chromes and therefore the overall effect of the palette. So I'll probably go ahead and insert a couple of more pictures of the final group of swatches. I feel like the camera on my phone might do a better job of capturing what I'm actually seeing sitting here swatching these and playing with them. This was so much fun. I feel like this was one of the most fun videos I've ever filmed. This was just spectacular. I feel like I want to do it again every month, like as if I'm releasing a series of palettes. Like this would be Hannah's palette #1, and then I'm gonna design like the Hannah palette volume 2 next month or something like that. That's like what I feel like I want to do. I'm really, really happy with this for a first crack. I would love to use this palette, and in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it right now. I'm going to choose this darker olive instead of this brighter olive if I'm just picking one, because I ended up kicking some of those deepening shades out of the palette. I feel like I would reach for this a lot to deepen up my outer corner, and that way I have just one for each color group. Okay, there we go. I really wanted to be able to lay it out like a true 9-pan palette, 3 rows of 3. So I ousted all of those teal and green eyeshadows from their temporary home, and I used this big Tarte palette to house my 9-pan palette. And I love it. I'm gonna try to use this exclusively, at least for a couple of days, maybe for a week or something, and just see if I did a good job. I feel like until it's in practice, I might not know if I actually did a good job, and I might want to come back and switch some things out. I'll try to report back about that in a future video. For now, this seems to me like the best, juiciest, grungiest, most textured, multi-dimensional thing ever, grounded in some strange reds and mustardy chartreuses, and that's just the life. Let me know what you guys think down below. Was this a success? Does it look too passé? Does it look too neutral? Does it look like it's not on trend? Do you think it looks like people would be excited about this if a brand actually released this? I'm so curious about other people's opinions because, you know, there's no accounting for taste. This is to my taste, but it might not be to your taste. It might not be to anyone's taste but mine. And then the last thing I want to say here is that if any brand comes out with this palette in the next couple of months, I will silently expect my check in the mail. And with that, I will leave you. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself right now so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.